Well, hello there, family. Welcome back to another edition of Crenshaw Corner. I am your host, Sanchez Crenshaw, and family. Oh, we got something special for you today. It's already getting crazy. Family, welcome back. It's been a minute, and we thank you for your patience. The Crenshaw Corner went on a slight vacation, but we are back and better than ever. So family, what you will not hear is my wonderful wife's voice this particular episode. As you can tell, the opening theme is just a little bit different than you're accustomed to. Why is that, family? It's really simple. This is After Dark, baby. We are doing an After Dark episode for you today, and we're doing it just a little bit different. Family, for the first time in Crenshaw Corner history, we have an all-male After Dark episode. So family, first of all, let me just thank you. Thank you for listening. However you're listening, whether it's on iTunes, whether it's Podbean, whether it's Spotify, whether it's Google Play, whether it's Amazon Music, whether it's iHeartRadio, or on our own personal website at www.thecrenshawcorner.com. As always, family, we consider ourselves an interactive podcast, which means we can be found on the socials. We're on Instagram, we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, all in the Crenshaw Corner. And of course, you can email us at any time at thecrenshawcorner@gmail.com. Once again, thecrenshawcorner@gmail.com. Now, families, you can see I kind of rushed through that opening because I'm excited, family. Oh, family, I'm excited.
Oh, yeah.
So, family, we're not going to even do introductions because you know these gentlemen. You've heard them multiple times. They are a member of the family. They are some of my closest friends. They are family. So we have Jarvis.
What's up? What's up, family?
We have Daniel.
Hooty hoo.
And family, guess what we don't have? We don't have any wives with us this episode.
They're not here.
So that means we are allowed to do and say whatever we want to say.
Yep.
And we will pay the consequences later.
That's right.
So family, what I wanted to do, I wanted to get the men together. And once again, I wanted to have an After Dark episode. And here's why. Because most men, if we're being honest, we grew up talking about sex since we could speak. We've heard about sex. We've seen sex. People have told us about sex. We've had sex.
We watched it on TV.
We watched it on TV. We heard a lot of different things about it. Not all of it good.
Right.
If we're honest, most of it not really good.
Right.
So that lead me to have a question because I knew how I grew up. I knew some of the things that came to me. I know, speaking for me, growing up, I had a very, let's just say, perverse idea of what sex and intimacy and what it is. So my question to you, gentlemen, is how did your upbringing, when it came to the topic of sex, how did that affect you? How did that affect you growing up? And then most importantly, how did that affect you in your marriage? Because I know it played a huge part in mine and not necessarily in a positive way. So I'm just curious. So Daniel, Mr. Taco Meat, Mr. Chest Hair.
How you doing?
Talk to me, sir.
How did it affect me growing up?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess the way I learned about sex, learning about it in elementary school, or I guess it was junior high school is when they have sex ed, right? And fortunately, I was here because I got to learn about what it, the birds and the bees, and so learning about it in the classroom and seeing it outside of the classroom kind of was a little damaging because in the classroom it's very formal. This is what you do. This is how kids come from, and then and outside, watching Emmanuel, it was like, this is
not what they told me in school.
They're doing what they said in school, but the purpose was really different.
Right.
And so that really impacted me because I had to now reconcile, what is it about? And I didn't have somebody tell me from a biblical perspective what sex is all about. And so it really impacted how I looked at it. And also kind of confused me a little bit because, it was soft porn that I was looking at.
Right.
In my neighbor's house up the street, they just called us and said, hey, come check this out. They had Emmanuel playing on TV, and it was like the music and just the lady. And it was, I was like, wow, I just got thrown into this thing. And so that's how it kind of impacted how I saw sex. Right. And so it was, interesting.
Now, Jarvis, I don't know about you, but it doesn't surprise me, of course, with Daniel. He had the proper education.
Exactly. No sex ed here.
Yeah, he had the proper. We're going to sit down with the textbook, and he had the proper introduction into it.
And his friends up the street were like, they were even in the sophomore.
How did that experience go for you, sir?
It wasn't soft porn. So for my actual introduction to sex,
right?
It was a girl who lived down the street.
Okay,
and her uncle lived around the corner from her and her mom.
Right,
and he lived in a 1-room apartment. And somehow she was watching his apartment, and he had a pretty extensive porn collection.
Oh, wow.
So she invited like 4 or 5 guys and 3 girls.
Oh.
And we just all went, and like me and my brother. We were probably like 9.
Wow. Oh, so at 9 we're having a porn party. Alrighty then.
Okay.
And she was probably like 13 or 14.
Oh, you had your older woman.
Which I mean, I didn't have her. She just invited us all. So I mean, I can like see this scene in my head. Like I'm standing, like there's some of us standing in the doorway. Literally, it's a 1-room apartment.
Right.
Like some of us are standing
like a studio.
in the door. Yeah, and like facing the street.
Okay.
Like this was literally like, it reminds you of a street facing garage.
Got you.
But it had actual door on it.
Okay.
So
Interesting.
it was really like just a 1 room. And we're all standing in the room watching this video, and like none of us have ever seen anything like this.
Right.
Like, and so I just kind of remember walking away from that moment like, whoa. And it didn't like open up a desire. Mm-hmm. It was more like a confusion.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Like, what did I just look at?
Because we're not.
This is like Nat Geo. Like, what did I just look at?
Because it's not like with Daniel. Because with Daniel, at least with Emmanuel, there's a storyline.
Right.
There's a plot. There's beautiful music, beautiful scenery.
Walking on the beach.
It's a date with benefits at the end.
Right.
Unlike the one you experienced,
no,
it's just straight to it.
Yeah, no, it had all of those things. It had a plot and music and storyline. They're just all very weak.
That's the one where she was walking and just fell, and then he fell, and it just
right. Like, oh, none of these people don't wear underwear. Why am I wearing underwear? Nobody wears underwear. And it gives you that it gives you a false sense of reality, like what really happens with intimacy. So.
And that's the thing. Once again, you and I are much on the same page. We didn't have that life that Daniel grew up with.
Start calling him Mr. Soft Porn.
No.
I had experience. It wasn't a group setting, but it was a friend with the old VHS tape. Mm-hmm. Here I got something for you. Yeah, that real good friend.
Right.
Here, take this home and look at it. And I'm in my room by myself in a dark room on a 13-inch black and white with a VCR.
Wow.
The old school. Kids actually, first of all, kids don't even listen to this episode. But if you're listening, ask your parents about a 13-inch. They'll tell you about the 13-inch black and white.
That's probably that's going to be like the last question they'll ask from this episode.
Right.
But yeah, and so I'm in my room, sneaking in the dark, and watching something. I'm like you, Jarvis. I have no idea what I'm watching.
Right.
I'm confused. I'm intrigued. I have questions. I'll never get answers because there's nobody I can ask, because I can't go to my mother and ask this question. My father wasn't around, and I really can't ask him, so I got nobody to ask these questions to. So now I'm just confused. Mm-hmm. And now, and looking back on it, I realize for me, like you said, that for me, that warped my sense of reality when it came to that, when it came to women, when it came to, because you said the word intimacy, but if we're honest, there's nothing intimate about it.
None of it.
You know, so because porn may teach you a lot, but intimacy is not something that it teaches.
That's true.
You know, even with Emmanuel, that's not really, you know, no matter how softcore they try to make it, no matter how romantic they try to make it, you know, it's just animalistic at the end of the day.
It is.
So for me growing up, especially once I hit because that happened in my adolescent years. So once I hit my teen years, so I started noticing that I started viewing women a whole lot different at that point in time. I wasn't seeing women anymore. I wasn't seeing a female. I wasn't seeing a person. I wasn't seeing a soul. I wasn't seeing intellect. I was seeing a conquest.
Right.
I wanted to do what I saw them do. That's what I wanted.
Wow.
And for me, because what I saw was the women didn't talk back. The women didn't care whether they got satisfied or not. Right. The women didn't care it was all about him.
Right.
It was all about his gratification, him being satisfied.
Right.
And he was done and he moved on with his life. Right. And for me, I took that to heart. I don't know about you guys. I don't know about you, Jarvis, but for me, and for a very long time, that affected a lot of my relationships.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think when you asked how did it affect your relationships and your marriage, I think that was probably the biggest way is that sex became about me. Right. It really wasn't about, getting closer to somebody or connecting with somebody. It was about it was about me. And then even with porn, it was even more like it was more about controlling my emotions. Like it was something I knew I could do to feel good. Right. Like it was a guaranteed I'm gonna feel good. Like if I watch some porn and masturbate, I'm gonna feel good. Like it put me in total control sexually. But then it also warped my sense of, like you said, like what sexuality was, what intimacy or what the act of sex should look like. None of it was real. Like I didn't realize that the positions that they were in were for the camera, not because they were actual good positions to be in.
This all about
and they film it over a 4 or 5 hour period. Yeah. So you think they go on forever, but that's not.
There's some cuts and some takes and some water breaks and some fluffing going on. And, yeah,
exactly. And so you don't understand any of that. You and I, Sanchez, were having a conversation about the beach and how nobody tells you about how the sand gets everywhere. Like they don't tell you that the first time you go into the beach. You don't realize like, oh, this sand is gonna be a problem. And it's the same way with porn. Like they don't. You get a false presentation of what sex is.
Yeah. And something you said early, Daniel, as well, because you was like, because the biblical aspect of it was never, because for me growing up, and I mentioned it on the podcast before, I grew up in a very, and I'm going to say religious home. Mm-hmm. It wasn't a relational home. It was a religious home. Mm-hmm. And so it was so we didn't talk about sex. Mm-hmm. Only thing about sex was you do it before marriage, you're going to hell.
Right.
Nobody telling me why.
Right.
Nobody telling me why I'm going to hell. Nobody telling me what it's all about. So now I'm out here just all willy-nilly I got questions. Nobody is willing to give me answers. So now I'm seeking for myself.
Right.
And I'm seeking in all the wrong places. How was it for you, Daniel? Did you have someone having a conversation talking, or was it just a friend up the street?
Never. I grew up in an African household. Right. Where you respect your parents regardless of what. Our home was very strict. Right. My dad being in the military, my mom just, very subservient to my dad. Okay. And I grew up looking at that relationship and just really, like, that was everything to me, and so for me to go to my dad and say, hey, or even my mom, it just does not happen in the African culture. You don't talk about that. You don't bring it up. And grew up in a Christian home like you, was very religious. There was no conversation about it. So I had nobody to really go to, just friends that had some idea, and then school. And so it wasn't really, there was no outlets to kind of figure it out. And I was a very naive kid. So for me, it was like, I knew, okay, this is good. this is bad.
Right.
And I was very, very, it's strict in that way with myself. And I knew when it was bad, I don't need, because I'm thinking about getting my butt kicked at home.
Right.
If I got in trouble, so I grew up in a very protected home, very strict home. And so I knew certain things that I just could not do at home, certain things I could not bring up. And so that kind of isolated me a little bit, because even bringing it up to friends or, it's just, I just didn't have an outlet. And so, and then I had friends in neighborhoods that were kind of, I don't know, I wouldn't say they were real friends. They were just guys we hung out with.
Right.
So I didn't have any intimate friends where I was like, hey guys, let's think about this. Let's talk about this. It was just really flaky. So no real outlet for me in terms of that. Yeah.
Jarvis, did you have anyone that you could talk to or bounce questions off of or anything of that nature?
No. Nobody that was going to give me any quality feedback.
Right.
So no. I mean, no. I mean, even like, my cousins, we all grew up in single parent homes. So you're not going to have this conversation with your mother. And again, my father was present physically, but not necessarily, engaged. So no, we just, it was kids teaching kids about sex.
It really was.
And that's how it was for me too. It was someone who has no idea of what they're doing.
Right.
No idea what the consequences are. It's like me trying to teach somebody how to fix an engine. All I do is to change the oil.
Right.
I can change your oil, but if your carburetor go out, I can't do nothing for you.
Right. You can give things you heard, I heard if you do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm curious. So your first relationship. So, okay. So we've all had similar experiences. We had the friends that brought us in and, learning things and giving us wrong information. And now we're trying to seek, we're trying to find. How did that affect your very first relationship?
How did that affect? Well, I guess I didn't really think, if I think back to the first girl that I dated, when I say dated, and I think about the first kiss that I had, it was strange. It was like, whoa, you see it on TV, I was 15 or 14 or something like that. I think about the first time I had sex.
Right.
I was 15 years old. It was my girlfriend's house.
Okay.
And it weirded me out, because it wasn't like what you saw on TV. It was just, we were both virgins, and so it was like trying to make it happen.
Right.
Was really the thought process. How does this thing work? It's like getting a brand new car and you're not trying to figure out the mechanics of it. You've heard about it, you've seen the manual here and there, but now that you're in it, like, what do you do? And I think for me, it was more like, this is what you do when you're dating.
Okay.
You kiss, you do, and then you do this, you have sex.
Right.
It wasn't anything, I wasn't thinking about Emmanuel, I wasn't thinking about any of that. I was like, okay, I love this person, and this is what we do when you love somebody.
Okay.
And that's really, so it was weird. It wasn't like you see on TV. It wasn't romantic. It was just like, all right, this is what we do. Let's do it. And then we did it, and it was like, okay, it wasn't very.
Now what? Yeah.
Yeah, right. It wasn't very satisfying, I would say, because it was just so hard to just figure all of it out, and you had so many things going. And,
Right.
It got better as things progressed.
Make sure you
throw that part in there.
It got much better, but the first time was not what I expected.
Do you even know why you did it the first time?
Because the thought process was, you do that because you love somebody.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
There was no other ulterior motive for me. There was no others. It was like, okay, we date, and part of dating is having sex with the people you date with. That was it. There was no. Because
the crazy part for me, and Jarvis, I want to hear that perspective from you as well. But for me, the first time I had sex, I can't even tell you why I did. I don't know why I did.
Right.
To be honest, because it's not something I necessarily wanted to do. It's not something I felt like I had to do. I'm gonna be honest, and I'm 43 at this point, so, and I'm sorry. I'm gonna apologize to her now if you listening. I'm sorry, but it lasted like 30 seconds. I'm gonna be honest with you. I was right. I don't even think I got the condom on good. I don't even know. So I'm trying to figure out why, because I don't, to this day, I don't know. Because
were you in a relationship with that person?
I was not.
Okay.
That's the thing. I was not. She was and when I say this, I am not being disrespectful, so please hear my heart. But she was just some random chick in the neighborhood.
Right.
It's really what she was. We were not in a relationship. She actually had been dating my friend. She was one of those young ladies that she just, for lack of a better term, it's after dark, but I'm gonna still be respectful. She knew a lot of people in the neighborhood. Right. We just leave it like that.
Yeah. Right.
So it wasn't, and I just happened to be the next dude up.
Right.
And I don't even know how I got there, to be honest with you. I don't even know how I got in the situation. I necessarily didn't want to be in the situation, but I was in the situation because I could be, and I felt like I'm a dude, and and looking at my father, and then looking at all the men around me, it's like, I guess this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So let's go ahead and start the process. What about you, Jarvis? How was it for you?
The first time, so I was again very confused by the visual of sex,
right?
So I didn't really pursue that. What I was seeing, like I didn't pursue it at all. I was into athletics and didn't really care about necessarily care about females. Like I just didn't care. That wasn't what my focus was. My focus was athletics, and I was really focused on that. So the first time I had a girlfriend, I think I was 15, and even then I didn't really care about it, but she did.
Okay.
So how I kind of ended up getting into it, she said, I think she kind of, hearing what Daniel said, I think that was kind of her mentality was, if we're dating and you love me, then we should be having sex.
Okay.
I didn't care. I just liked being around you. So she was like, why don't you ever try to do anything?
Right.
Are you gay?
Was I was
like, was she a virgin? No.
Okay.
No.
Not do you respect me? Not do you care? Just you don't want to have sex, so you must be gay.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Cool.
So obviously, I'm like, no. Let's do it now.
As a matter of fact,
now she done hurt your pride.
Exactly. So the first time we're in the hallway of a hotel, like, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Like, and to be fair, like this young lady, she had been adopted and had been being molested by her adopted brothers.
Right.
So her view on sex was
already skewed.
It's very skewed.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So for her, it was like, you don't like me if you're not like what you don't like me.
Wow. Mm. And that's a whole different conversation right there. Oh man.
Yeah. So and honestly, I had been molested when I was young too. Okay. So that also kind of scared me about sex. Just like the experience that I had went through was traumatic for me. So I was just kind of very cautious about my body and stuff like that.
Right.
So I wasn't interested. But then when she posed that question, I'm like, okay. So if my only choices are to have sex or be gay, obviously I'm gonna.
We're in the hallway now. Now we're in the hallway.
Right. And so, the first time was in the hallway at a hotel.
Right.
And now I kind of I like it. Like I'm like looking for it, and I'm kind of like, okay, if this is what we supposed to be doing, then every time I see you, this is what we supposed to do. And so the second time we had sex, she got pregnant.
Okay.
And we had a baby.
And this was 15, right? 14, 15?
I was 15 when my daughter was born.
Right. Yeah. And that's the part, like your Emmanuel's and your, and your Debbie Does Dallas, and this is the part they don't tell you about. No. And this is the part, even if you do it the proper way, like with you, Dad, you sit down with the textbooks and you walk through the physiology of. Right. But what they don't tell you is with sex comes baggage.
Yes.
Right.
It's not just a physical act.
Right.
Yes.
It's emotional and spiritual. Because like with this young lady, she's not just bringing her body to you.
Right.
She's bringing her scars. She's bringing her hurt.
Yep.
She's bringing, unless someone is doing something to me, that's the only way I must matter. because of her past and what happened.
Right.
And they don't tell you about that.
No, even if they tell you in the school books, like, because they told you, hey, again, this is where they told me, this is how the birds and the bees, this is how kids are born. But they don't tell you that could happen to you.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And that's a big difference. Because when they tell you that could happen to you, for me, that would have scared me stiff. What am I going to tell my parents?
Yeah.
You know,
So now
what am I going to do?
Now I got to tell them you about to be a grandparent.
I'm going to get killed.
Yeah. And they don't tell you about that. And like for me, because and when I really have honest conversations with myself, from the time I started having sex until the time I married my wife, Angela, there was a period of time, it was never about anyone but me.
Absolutely.
Right? I didn't, to be honest, and if we're having a real honest conversation, the first time I had intercourse is with my wife, Angela. Mm-hmm. And now understand, she's not my first wife though.
Right.
You know, I've been married before.
Right.
But the first time I had intercourse, the first time I had an actual intimate relation was with my wife.
Right.
Yeah. Now I got a kid before my wife. You know, I've had relationships before my wife. Like I said, I've been married before my wife. But my idea of sex and my idea of relationships was so skewed coming up that no one mattered to me.
Right.
That they were really just an ends to a means, to the point that I had to go on social media some years back and just put out an apology.
Right.
I did.
Right.
It's like, for every woman that I've encountered up until this point, I am so sorry.
Right.
Because I was a jerk. I mistreated you. Because the sad part about it is, like, I don't remember names. Mm-hmm. I remember faces, some of them, but I remember situations.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, because no one ever had that conversation with me. No one ever sat down and said, just because you're a guy doesn't let you off the hook.
Right.
Just because you're a guy doesn't mean that you can be out here pollinating any and everything and there's no consequences. I wish somebody would have had that conversation with me. Right. What about you guys?
Well, I mean, for me, I tell my kids, the older ones, the biggest regret that I have is having sex before marriage.
Right.
Because when you look at what it's all about and the biblical design of it, the soul ties that I have, sometimes, well, most of the times, when that past comes in and it impacts my relationship, or it used to do more than it does now, impact my relationship with my wife in terms of that. I'm thinking about somebody outside of her, right? And you gotta bury those thoughts, but to be intimate with somebody, like you said, having intercourse for the first time and having sex in a relationship or true intimacy, which is more than just the act,
right,
truly happened with my wife, because it was spiritual, it was emotional. I mean, all of it tied into one, and really understanding how that feels, right? Versus like sex is sex, you can do it with anybody, right? But having that true intimacy with somebody where that is part of it,
right,
is a whole different ballgame. Right. And for me, if I could take a step back and just rewind time, I would save it for, when I got married, because then being able to share that fully, body, mind, and soul with somebody, I could just imagine what God's design would be in terms of that, where it's just you're fully committed to this person and you're doing everything to be as intimate, as close as one with that person. It's just so powerful, So when I think about it, it's like, oh well, I wish I didn't. Yeah. But God has restored that, and now I'm like, oh, okay, this is what it means now. This is true intimacy, and and it starts in the morning. It doesn't start at night.
Right.
So
my mission definitely starts at the beginning of the day. I tell my wife all the time.
And the goal is, as much as we're guys, the goal is always to get in.
Yeah.
But you started early.
You started early.
It's like Pinky and the Brain. What are we doing today?
Right.
Same thing we do every day.
That's right.
Trying to take over the world.
That's it's the goal every day.
Yeah. So I'm curious, Jarvis. So let's say if time travel was possible and you could go back to this version of you and go back to that 14, 15-year-old version of yourself, what conversation would you have with him?
Wow. The first thing I'm going to try to contextualize sex for you.
Right.
Like that's what I'm going to do for me. Like, it's actually what I do with my sons is don't tell people that sex is bad. because it's not.
Right.
Even when it's out of context, it still feels good.
Right.
But ultimately, what are the results of the experience? And that's really what you want to be in control of. Or what are the results of the experience?
Right.
And so, at its core, sex is on a physical level, it's for reproduction. At a spiritual level, it's agreement.
Right.
It's a covenant. And so, having that conversation with my sons that I felt that I needed was, look, if you agree with everything about this person, then okay, you could have sex. But when you look at the reality of who you are, you're not even sure who you are.
Right.
So how could you agree with everything about this person? They don't know who they are. They're still trying to discover themselves. You're still trying to discover yourself. Allow yourself, because sex opens up a whole new world.
Oh, yeah.
It opens up a whole new world. You know, nations are conquered over sex, like really over masculinity.
It's powerful.
Yeah.
A whole city fell because of one young lady. The city of Troy fell behind one young lady.
So, Sodom and Gomorrah fell.
Yeah.
Over sexuality.
Yes, sir.
So it's a whole world. And so what I've told my sons is, look, until you discover who you are, stay in your world, like trying to figure out who you're supposed to be.
Right.
What did God make you for? How do you perceive the world before you open up that door of sexuality? It don't matter what your friends say, because they don't know who they are either.
Yeah.
And then they've introduced sex, and now they're trying to pretend for the opposite sex, but they don't know who they are.
Right.
So it's again, I'm 3 out of 4, and then one who like, let me see. But it's just really putting it in context and being real and not lying about. The lie about is don't feel good or it's not good or just that it's a sin. If it's a sin, why does it feel so good?
Right.
Right.
But the sin is that it causes separation from your agreement with God.
Right.
So, yes, it's a sin, but explain to me what does, because obviously the world is telling me that it's fine.
Right.
So you telling me it's a sin it's a million to your one. Damn.
How do I balance that?
Yeah. How do I balance that? So I'm not gonna lie to you and tell you that it does feel good, but it's designed to be placed in a context. Right. It needs to be in its proper surrounding.
Right.
That's when it's good.
Right.
What about you, Daniel? You can go back to that 16-year-old version of yourself, and what conversation will you have with him?
I try to keep it simple. I guess I'm about to have a 16-year-old son. What am I going to tell him based on what I know?
Right.
What I know now, but that he can digest at his 16 years, at his age.
Right.
And what I would say is what is the purpose? Understand the purpose, right? What God has designed for what this is supposed to be used for, right? It's for a committed relationship, as Jarvis said, it's a covenant, right? And just really giving him an understanding of not, that 100,000 foot level,
right?
But for his basic understanding is like, what purpose are you like? I love what he said. Is like, who are you first of all? What is your purpose? What has God called you to do? Understand what God's called you to do as a young man, as a boy, as a Christian, and then just walking him through the steps in every relationship as much as possible. But really giving him a firm biblical understanding and then really just being plain about the fact that it's sex within itself is good.
Right.
I mean, it's feels good. It's, and then really explaining all that stuff to him so that he's not, when it does happen in that context of a relationship, he understands. And also just, you can't isolate what you say. Like I can't just say, okay, we have to talk about the relationship. We have to talk about all of this.
It's not just
stuff
sex
that
in a
goes,
vacuum.
right?
Yes.
You've got to talk about all of that. Are you pursuing somebody for what is your purpose in pursuing them? So there's a whole package that goes along with it. And once you explain everything to them or him, then I can, put it in context a little bit better. But it's more than just sex.
So one of the things that the Holy Spirit taught me, because through watching porn, through just kind of like having that fantasy mindset,
Right.
I struggle with how I looked at women, right? Like they were very much objectified in my mindset. The Holy Spirit had to teach me how to see women. And so for me talking to my sons is like really the most important choice you're ever going to make in life outside of choosing to follow God is choosing the woman that you're going to pursue your purpose with.
Right.
That is the most important choice you're going to make as a man in life.
Right.
So like you said, sex is not in a vacuum. It needs to be with somebody that fits all the parameters for you and purpose in life.
Right.
So this is kind of how the Holy Spirit kind of helped me to change the way I looked at women. You can have as many sisters as you want.
Right.
You can have as many mothers as you want. You can have as many daughters as you want. And you never look at any of those sexually. You can only have one wife.
Right.
That's a very important choice.
Right.
And once you make that choice, that's the only woman you can look at sexually. And if you see everybody else's mothers who you'll never like look at your mother sexually.
I'm hoping you don't. It's a whole different conversation at that point.
You never look at your sister sexually.
Right.
And you don't look at your daughter sexually.
Unless you're in Virginia, but that's something different. I'm just joking, Virginia. I love y'all. Just joking.
So you only get that once. So make that choice like it matters.
Right.
And everything about that woman, intimacy should be a part of that choice. But the bigger part of it is she a partner?
Right.
Like, can she partner with me on what I'm pursuing in life?
For me, it was the conversation I would have with that version of myself is understand that you come from an addictive family. There's addictions.
Wow, that's good.
On both sides of my family. On my father's side, it's alcohol and drugism. On my mother's side, it's some alcoholism and smoking and things of that nature. So addiction runs in my family.
Yeah.
And for me, porn and sex became an addiction for me. Because like when I said, because even all the times as I was having sex, I wasn't having it because I really wanted to.
Right.
I felt like I had to.
Yeah.
It felt like something I had to be doing.
You're driven.
I'm driven to do it.
Yeah.
I'm driven, even though I could really care less about what's on my TV right now.
Yeah.
But it has to be there. To be honest, and like I said, this is why I had to do apologies. I could really care less about this young lady that's in front of me right now. Half the times I don't even know your name.
Yeah, you're a means to an end.
You are a means to an end. You are there to serve a purpose. Now please leave.
Yeah.
Right. Because I remember, and so sorry, family. And there's so many, like you said, Daniel, sometimes those images and those thoughts come back. And I'm like, if I was the brother of this young lady, dude, I put you under for how you treated my sister, for what you did, for what I did to somebody's sister, somebody's daughter, somebody's, friend. And it's like, yo, just understand that what you're doing, you need to step back, sir.
Right.
Step back and think, because what you're doing, you're so full of holes right now.
Right.
You're so full of voids, and you're trying to fill all these voids and you're trying to fill these holes, and you're doing it in a very destructive way.
Right.
Because not only am I ruining my life right now, but I'm ruining somebody else's life.
Yeah.
Because understand, I'm not the best dude in the world, but I was smooth with what I said. Mm-hmm. I can make you feel like you're the most important person in the world. I can make you feel like no one else in this world matters. You're the most important thing to me. I know the words to say.
Gifted writer.
Yes, sir. I know the words. I know how to say it. I know the right context. I know the right voice tone. I know how to do it. So I have you feeling like you're the most important thing in the world until.
Right.
Now, once the act is done, and to be honest, I ain't even got to do it twice with you. I just need that one time.
All them skills gone.
All it gone. Now I was ghosting people before ghosting became a thing.
Right.
Yeah.
You know,
The original ghost.
The original ghost. And it's like, but why? It's like, no, seriously, why? Why was it worth breaking that young lady's heart? Why was it worth hurting that young lady? Why was it worth it? Why was it worth you being that person in her life?
Wow. Can I tell you the story real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
You reminded me of that story of this when you were talking. So I had this situation, and you talk about if I was somebody's brother or father, the brother or father to a young lady. I remember a particular situation where I was at this girl's house. She told me she was a virgin.
Right.
I kind of didn't believe her, but I kind of did because she was socially awkward.
Okay.
And we had sex or whatever, and because it wasn't good to me,
right?
Like it was like, yeah, not only you socially awkward, you're sexually awkward. I did this thing where I like faked my aunt called me like it's a family emergency.
Oh, you did one of those.
Wow. Like I gotta go.
Young Jarvis would not come to my house.
Not at all. I'm throwing rocks at young Jarvis.
Yeah, please don't.
I'm throwing rocks.
And so to think about now, like where that left her.
Right.
Having given her virginity, something she had been holding on to for, 17 years, 16 years at that point.
Right.
She gives her virginity. She knew that come on, man. She knew I bailed on her.
Yeah.
Like, no matter how the story sound, like.
Yeah.
Right.
But to leave her there in that moment, like, how cold and cruel that was.
Yeah. And that's something I wish that someone would have took the time to taught me. I don't think that was proper English, but I'm gonna work with it. would have taken the time to teach me that, because and I think that's the part, especially, and right now I'm talking to the men in the audience right now. It's not just a one-sided affair.
Right.
It is not just you getting yours, because there is another person within this. One thing I always taught my sons growing up is that you respect her even if she doesn't respect herself.
Yeah.
And that's something that I wish that someone would have told me growing up, because if I would have thought about that concept of, regardless of what I think of her, regardless of what she's portraying, because once again, like the young lady, your first experience, she had so much baggage, so much pain, so much hurt. She didn't know why she was doing what she was doing.
Right.
It wasn't because she just really wanted to be out here having sex. No, it's she tied her worth to it.
Right.
That's right.
For me to, because of what happened to me, the only way I can feel wanted is you have to be doing this to me.
Right.
And if we think about that, why are you in this? Why are you in this situation? Why are you there? What's gotten you there?
Right.
And even I say this, even if you think she a hoe, every hoe has a story.
Right.
Yeah.
Nobody just woke up one day and was like, you know what?
I want to be a hoe.
I just want to be a hoe today. I done looked at the resume for hoism.
Yeah.
And I just want, no one does that.
Right.
There's brokenness there. There's pain there. There's hurt that got a person.
Every hoe got a daddy issue story.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Just like every stripper working through college and every hoe got a daddy issue. And here's the thing. Understand when I say this, that works both ways.
Yeah.
Male hoes and female hoes.
Mm-hmm.
Every hoe, whether you a male hoe or a female hoe, you got a daddy issue.
That's right.
And because, to be honest, that's what tied a lot to me.
Right.
Because I was searching, because I wanted my father. At the end of the day, everything for me when it comes to my brokenness all ties to one thing. I just wanted to be important to my father.
Right.
And because I was never as important to him as I thought I should be, so now everything I do is to fill that void. What can I do to fill that void? Okay, you wanted to get naked for me? Let's go.
Let's go.
Let's see if that filled that void.
Right.
That didn't, you go away. All right, let me try her. And I spent the majority of my teenage and most of my early adult life That was my mentality. Just going out there and just trying to find something to fill a void. And once again, not realizing, dude, you know how many people you've hurt along that way?
Right.
You know how many people that you're their story?
Wow. Yeah.
Right.
That you're their turning point.
Right.
In the process of healing or trying to heal, you're hurting.
You're hurting.
You're hurting others. Yeah, that's I mean, think about it that way.
And go ahead, you said something?
No, go ahead. Yeah.
I don't know, family. The reason I wanted to have this conversation, I wanted to have it for a reason. It's because right now when it comes, and this is just my opinion, you guys may disagree. Please let me know if you agree or disagree. But the male species is broken in a lot of ways.
Absolutely.
Because we've been taught for too long that our worth is tied to our sexuality. That because we're taught that as a man, before you settle down, go sow your seed. Go be with as many people as you need to be. Go be, a man is not supposed to be monogamous. Go out there and just go. Right. Not realizing once again, you're doing all that, but you're doing that with somebody's daughter, somebody's sister, somebody's auntie. Right. Is it worth it? Is it worth having all these bodies in your wake? Is it worth having all these broken hearts? Is it worth it? I'm starting to think it's not worth it.
Yeah.
No, it's definitely not worth it. Because again, as you mature, you understand the implications of what you've done.
Right.
And like Daniel said, you have all these souls tied to your soul.
Right.
And the branches that came off of their life that you impacted from the decisions you made, that doesn't feel good.
Right.
Speaking of the young lady that I mentioned just before, that lady's now a lesbian.
Oh,
was I a part of that? The hurt that I caused her in that first experience with the man.
Right.
Did that impact that decision that I don't want to deal with men?
Right.
Like, I have to deal with that.
Right.
Like, so it's not worth it. It's definitely not worth it. And then even beyond your past, how is it in your present? Like, how do you treat your wife now?
Right.
Because of all of those things, or how you view sex, or, I think Daniel said, or I think it was you, Sanchez, said that, it took you to your second wife to really understand intimacy,
right,
not sex.
Right.
And that it was the same way for me. Like, I really just, D and I have been married for 13 years. I think probably, so it took to right before we got married, because we didn't have sex before we got married. So we were together for 2 years. Then I got saved and we stopped having sex for a year.
Right.
The first time we had intimacy after we got married, after not having sex for a year, was the first time in my life where I didn't feel driven to have sex.
Got you.
Like, there wasn't something pushing me.
Right.
Like, prior, I went through a whole marriage with, if I wanted to have sex, like, nobody going to sleep tonight. Like, you gonna wake up and I'm gonna be
fish in my house stop swimming.
Nobody going to sleep tonight. So it was the first time that I had sex, and it didn't feel like something was pushing me.
Right.
And it felt awkward. Like, to the point where it was like, I don't really know what this is supposed to feel like. It was, and the funny thing was, when we talked, D and I talked about it, maybe about a week later,
right,
she's like, I felt the same way. Like, it just felt weird, because it was the first time we chosen to have sex and weren't driven by lust, where it's, lust is saying, no, you finna do this, like somebody, like it's finna happen. Then it took probably another, I hate to say it, probably another 5 or 6 years before it was like, I understood that it wasn't about, that I didn't take her denying me sex as rejection.
Right.
Because I took it that way every time. Even though I knew she didn't feel that way, it still felt like rejection.
Yes.
It still felt like maybe I'm not worthy.
Yeah. Been there.
And it took the Holy Spirit delivering me to know, understanding my worth and understanding that he gave me some cheat codes, honestly, to understand that a lot of the times when my wife was denying me sex, it wasn't because of me. It was because of what was going on in her head, like whatever she was thinking about from the day. And so he taught me to just start taking stuff off her plate.
Yeah.
Well, you've unpacked a lot there. And I'll just say this real quick. I mean, in terms of just the way I grew up and what I knew sex was about, and even from a biblical standpoint, it's marriage and you're in a couple and all that stuff. So 3 years prior, when we dated, we never had sex over a 3-year period. And I was about to explode. We talked about this in the last episode. And I was like, when? So we got married and we had it, and it was awkward. But what I realized in that whole process, even in the biblical model, even if you're in the biblical model, that is in terms of, okay, you're married, you have sex, you still have to go through that process of learning about what is intimacy.
Right.
What is, and the Lord had to really, I mean, it took us a while to get to a point where it's like, oh, okay, this is what God designed it to be. Because still within that relationship, you're kind of like, we're going to have sex this day. We're going to have, this is what we're going to do because we're married now. We're supposed to do it. And if I don't get it, I feel rejected.
Right.
Is it me? Is it something I'm doing? Do you not find me attractive, etc.? And so I had to learn that even lusting after your wife, that lust can result in those soul ties. Because then you start thinking about, okay, how am I going to satisfy the need that I have within that I'm not getting in my marriage?
Right.
And doing certain things and opening certain doors that I don't need to be when I'm doing it. And so in that marriage context, in biblical marriage, I had to learn about what true intimacy really is and really take the time to say, it starts at 8 a.m. in the morning.
Exactly.
Right? You want to get in at 10, you start at 8.
Oh, yeah.
But
Right.
you also you have to look at your spouse in a different way.
Right.
And you really have to, it was hard. It was really, but now it's like I understand kind of the whole thing in terms of what the meaning of sex is and what God intended for it, and how wonderful it is in a relationship that is truly committed, and so on and so forth.
Because I think the part that a lot of men miss out on is that sex for men is physical. Mm-hmm. Sex for women is emotional, is mental. Like you said, and the same thing happened with my wife. If too much is on her mind,
Right.
if she's thinking about too much, if too much is going on, she's not going to want to do that. She's not going to want to do that physical act. So like you had to learn, okay, so what's weighing on her?
Right.
Let me take that off.
That's the not tonight, honey, I got a headache.
Yeah.
That traditional line. It's not that her head is literally hurting. It's I have too much on my mind.
I got too much. I'm thinking about too much.
Yeah.
That I can't think about that right now. And like you're saying, like we've been saying throughout the whole thing, I used to sit under a pastor. He used to use the phrase "till the land." Mm-hmm. When you're planting, you just don't drop a seed and automatically you get a plant. That's not how that works. You got to work that land first. You gotta till that soil. You got to do some things first before you reap the benefit of that crop. Right. It's the same thing.
Right.
And it's also doing it not for the purpose of just having sex.
Right.
If only time you show her attention, the only time you rub on her, the only time you love on her, the only time you tell her you love her, it's because you just want to have sex, she's not dumb. Right. Women are not stupid.
Right.
She knows that trend. Mm-hmm. So only Fridays is the only time you love me.
Right.
Thursdays I don't hit nothing from you.
Right.
Thursday you don't hug me, you don't touch. Oh, but Friday, now it's all about me.
Right. See, and you got to understand the cheat codes. So let me give the fellas some cheat codes. Number 1 cheat code, cleaning.
Oh yeah,
that's the number 1 cheat code. Now you can't do it too often because then it loses its effect.
It doesn't work for everybody. But go ahead.
True. Now, that's the number 1 cheat code for most men, because if your wife is usually the one that cleans, if you hit that house, she almost feel obligated. Like, I'm going to get this man something. And you got to use them in combination. You can't just use one cheat code. Right. You got to use them like, okay, this one I'm going to use left, right, up, down, up, down. But you got to use them in combination. So the other thing is surprise her.
Yeah.
Always be surprising your wife. But you got to understand what surprises your wife.
Right.
You can't. This is the thing I love about God. He tells us how to be in marriage as an individual.
Yeah.
Husband, be this. Wife, be this. He does not tell us how to be how to be a couple.
Right.
He doesn't say couples be this.
Right.
Like your marriage should look like this. He doesn't say that. Nowhere in the Bible does it define how your marriage should look.
Right.
It defines how you should look as a man and how you should look as a woman.
Right.
What your role is and what your role is. But how it looks, it's too many people to give you a formula for how your marriage should look.
Yeah.
So understand what your wife and what surprises her. So keep her surprised. If she asks you to do something, do it.
Just do it.
It's simple.
Yeah.
Do it.
It's the simple things.
Even if it ain't important, I had to learn. Just because it ain't important to me don't mean it's not important, to her. Now, if I don't do it and she's still thinking about it 3 days later, she don't want to have sex. She's still thinking about the thing you didn't do.
Right. And so for me, when you talk about cheat codes, I had to learn all of that, in that it was so much about what do I do to get there versus what do I do in paying attention to her.
Right.
One of the scriptures that I love is like, husbands, live in an understanding way with your spouse. Understand your spouse. Know who she is.
Right.
So my number one cheat code, is that right?
Cheat code.
Cleaning the fridge. The first time I cleaned the fridge, he was like, "Oh, you cleaned the fridge. Come here." You know what I'm saying? But that's in my home. It works for me. It worked for me. But I found out because I was tilling the land. I was trying to figure, and I didn't have any motives in mind.
Exactly.
Right. And it's different when you have that in mind versus like, you know what? I want to understand my wife.
Yeah.
I want to love her. I want to care for her. So
Pay attention to your wife.
That's right.
Don't pay attention to the Instagram model. Don't pay attention to the chick on TV. Don't pay attention to somebody else's wife.
That's right.
Pay attention to your wife.
Right.
Learn what your wife likes.
Right.
Every wife don't like a surprise or just a bow on your penis. That don't work for every wife. You talking about surprise?
Right.
No, that don't work for everybody.
Right.
You gotta, like you said, and I love the fact that both you said this. You have to pay attention to your wife. It's about learning your wife. And that was the hardest thing for me, because growing up, I tried to have a template. I tried to put everybody in the same mold. I'm going to act the same for everybody. I'm going to say the same for everybody, and I'm going to get the same result for everybody.
Yep.
My wife taught me, nah, dog, that don't work for me.
Right.
You can't, this what you doing, this pretty boy thing you doing, this licking your lips, and that don't work for me.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, that don't work. You got to try something different for me. That don't work. So it forced me. And that's the reason why, like I said, for the first time with her, it's the first time I actually had intercourse, the first time I had intimacy, because I was forced to learn her.
Right.
Right.
She didn't take me at face value.
Right.
Everyone else, good, bad, or indifferent, took me at face value. They believe what I said. She saw through the BS. She said, that's not you.
Right.
And until you show me who you
And
are.
your wife will call you out. Like,
Seriously.
And they will.
And they will. Go ahead, Eddie.
To add to what you're saying, I mean, one of the things that I guess this is a cheat code for men, just because you're married does not guarantee that you're going to have sex all the time.
Exactly.
And one of the things you have to really think about is like, what are the things that you did to get her? Right? You continue, because some men get married and it's like, I don't need to do the things that I did.
I got her now.
And it doesn't work. You got to go. And if it doesn't work, just remember, what did you do to get her, and do those things, because that's the only way it's going to.
Yeah, you have to be laying track, not laying pipe. I said laying track. You have to be laying track ahead of time. You can't wait till you get to Friday night to start saying, I'm going to prepare for us to have intimacy, for us to have intercourse. Like, you have to be working on that all week. And it's not and Daniel said something that's really important. When you're fasting, you know that you're going to get a result from God from fasting, but you're not fasting simply for the result. So it's the same with your wife. Like, you know that you're going to get a result if you do certain things, but you're not doing the certain things for the result. You're doing them for her.
Yeah, because you love her.
Right. And the result comes, it just comes as an added. So if you really allow yourself to understand your wife and you could be working on You could be working on Tuesday sex last Friday.
Oh yeah.
Right.
I'm working on Wednesday sex on Sunday. I'm working on like you could be setting up just and ultimately it's the more you take things off of your wife's mind,
Right.
the more free she is to enjoy sex with you. Because women like sex.
They do.
Yeah.
They enjoy sex. But they have to be mentally free to do it as often as you want to do it.
Right.
Yeah, and Sanchez said men, it's a physical, women, it's emotional. It's really understanding the difference between men and women as it relates to that.
Yeah.
Will help you guys,
Yeah.
us. It's helped me tremendously because, me pulling down my shirt, no, it doesn't work for my wife. It just doesn't
That's
work.
cute. No.
That's
But-
right,
No, but my refrigerator needs to be clean.
Right. But men are visual creatures. God
yeah.
created us. We see.
Talk
that's why-
about that, Daniel.
That's why they market.
visual.
They market to us. Right. It's like,
Do they
when
though?
you watch TV?
Hold on now. Let's get real. You brought up something that really touched my soul about these wives out here. Now, I had to tell my wife, you my Instagram model.
Right. Right.
So if you don't, I don't get to go out and look at Instagram models. Like, I don't get no porn stars. So you gotta be that. Like, I don't want you in a flannel joint. I don't want to see that
Every
like,
day.
No days. Like every day, I could go out and look at Instagram models and be very much visually satisfied.
Right.
I don't get that option.
Right.
You that option for me. So you have to keep that in mind. If we go out on a date, I don't need you in a sweatsuit. Like,
But that's for you, right? And that
'Cause
that
I'm
is-
visual.
Yeah, 'cause you're visual, but that's for you in your context. Like, so there is the modesty aspect, right? There's the aspect of like, okay, this is for you,
Right.
But then we go out. I don't want my wife showing because we're out.
Right.
Other people are going to see that, and other men could have that. Well, a lot of men have that because we're visual creatures. I don't want anybody else to trip up because they're seeing. So for me, it's like there's the modesty, and she understands that because that's.
Right.
But it's really meant for you and for your eyes only. So outside of that and outside of the house, it becomes a whole different ballgame.
well, for me personally, I want my wife to be the sexiest woman in the room. Now, I do want to my wife is modest anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
So even if she is going to be,
With the green dress. We'll talk about that.
oh my gosh.
He really did.
The green dress.
Right. Even if she is going to be sexy,
Right.
she's not gonna, she's still gonna be modest with it. But that's for me. Like, I don't want, I'm talking about sexiest in the room for me.
Right.
Like, not sexiest in the room for Sanchez or for some other dude. Right. Like, for me, what I find most attractive.
Right.
But
Get it.
what I don't want is sweatsuits and jumpsuits. And, every time we go somewhere, I want to see you in a way that I find visually attractive. Like when we went, like if you was going on a date, they have to keep up their end too.
Right.
Like you can't, when we would go on it, like you said, Daniel, whatever I did to win her, if we went on a date back in the day, like she would have put on something.
Right.
Like she put on that black dress. Now we go on a date and it's like, you got on Jordans and a sweatsuit. Like we dressed like two dudes hanging out.
I think we missed that point too, and it goes both ways. Now you touched on it from a male point of view. When it comes to our wives, we have to do what got her. We have to
Right.
do the same thing to keep her. Women are the same way.
Absolutely.
You wasn't wearing sweatsuits every day when I met you.
Right.
You wasn't, when we first got together, you wasn't coming to bed in flannels and a muumuu. That's not what we were doing out here. Now all of a sudden everybody comfortable.
Right.
Now you coming, now I'm itching because you got on the flannels every night. I'm like, I'm just going to sleep. I don't even want to do this no more.
And
It's
your
like,
helmet of salvation. You got
You know
your
what I'm
helmet of
saying?
salvation
Right.
on every night.
what we doing?
Right.
All right. We could do this all day. But I do want to be respectful of everybody's time. So just, first of all, gentlemen, thank you. Thank you for having this conversation. Thank you for being open. We got to do this again. I kind of enjoy this.
Yeah,
Daniel, what's your final thought for the family?
Wow. I'll divert to Jarvis. Final thought, and then let me think about it.
Final thought, Jarvis.
Okay. Final thought for my man. The ultimate way to really open your wife up, because you've really never experienced intimacy with your wife until you've got her open, got her mental walls down.
Right.
Is to love her. Like to deliberately show her that you go out of your way to consider her first.
Right.
You will find the best sex you've ever had when you got a woman that knows she is loved without question. She knows she's loved. That's going to be the best sex you ever have in your life. Because until you've had sex with your wife and when she's fully open, like she's a flower fully bloomed, you haven't really experienced her yet.
Love it. Daniel?
For me, I think true intimacy starts with intimacy with God. You know, knowing and understanding whose you are in Him as a man,
right,
as a husband, as a father, and then that everything else is driven from there. When you have intimacy with God, your relationships are better, especially the most important relationship, which is the relationship with your spouse, becomes really, really whole, and it becomes really, really just well-defined, and there's purpose to it. And so that's what I would leave with you guys.
I'm going to do my final thought. I'm going to quote a great African prophet, Rafiki. And he said, let the past be the past. Gentlemen, we've all made mistakes. We've all have done things, have said things, have made decisions and made choices that, given a second chance, we wouldn't have made.
Right.
However, the past is the past. We no longer allow our past to dictate our present or dictate our future. Make the pivot, make the change, and move on.
Amen.
That's my final word. Gentlemen, once again, I thank you. I thank you for joining us. I thank you for being a part of this. Family, this has been good, and I want to do this again.
Absolutely.
We're going to do it again.
Thank you.
So, family, thank you for joining us. However you're listening, whether it's on iTunes, whether it's Podbean, whether it's Spotify, whether it's Google Play, whether it's Amazon Music, or on our own personal website at www.thecrenshawcorner.com. We thank you for listening. And family, as always, welcome to our journey.